Hi friends, it's Scott Giro and welcome to another episode of Power Apps Cafe. In this episode, we're going to be talking about delegation and paging in Dataverse and specifically the Creator Kit details list. So if you're interested in that, stick around. So far in this series, we've been looking at building an app that looks similar to this, where we've got a grid using the Fluent details list from the Creator Kit, and the columns you can sort and you can resize, and we've got some interesting status formatting, and we've also got the ability to then filter on different industry types, so you can add multiple filters by industry types. We can also filter by status as well. So it kind of gives us that ability to make more complicated filters than just selecting a single status. And then we've got the ability to have a command bar at the top here. And we've also got some paging as well. And one of the focus points so far has been very much about making sure that we are performing delegated queries. And that is, those queries are happening on the server. Let's do a quick recap on what does delegation mean. We've covered it previously. The Power Apps client shown here is simply doing a filter in this particular case. And in a delegated scenario, that filter would be able to return exactly the results across a very large data set. When you've got a non-delegated query, what will happen is, in this case, we're only going to get up to the delegation limit. So we're only going to get that first set of records. And if we're looking to filter to include both the yellow and the blue records, because we only get up to that delegation limit, then we're only going to see the yellow result, which will be incorrect. And this actually happens for sorting as well, because if you're going to sort in a non-delegated way, then we might sort by seeing, we want to see the yellow result, the yellow record, and then the blue record. But if we do a non-delegated sort, then we'll only get that first set of records up to the delegated limit, will only include the yellow record, and then we'll do the sort on the client, which of course will not include the blue record. So delegation is really, really important. And if you've got delegation happening in a Power Apps gallery, it is automatically handled for you if you've got a very straightforward filter against Dataverse. So what happens is that you firstly get up to that delegation limit, and then you get that first set of records. Then the gallery will automatically make a call behind the scenes to get more rows. And so it will get the next 500 records, and it uses something called a skip token, which is effectively a cookie that allows you to move between different pages based on the previous page. And then obviously if you reach the next set of records, it will then go and grab you that next set of 500 records. So the gallery is actually quite powerful in the way it's working, because it sort of does this infinite scrolling. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So here we are in the app that we've been working on. If we come over to the second screen, I've just added this in. You can actually have multiple screens inside a custom page if you go and enable this enable multiple screens setting. It's encouraged to only have a single or very small number of screens, but if you've got any on-visible events inside your events, you need multiple screens to be able to toggle between them, because you can't run them manually. And also a second screen is quite useful for sort of debug purposes as well. So I'm going to go and add in a vertical gallery here just to kind of see what it does with this get more rows pattern. So I'll also add in a label. What we're going to look at is how the all items property works. So this is called gallery 3. And if we go into label here, I can say count rows, and I can say gallery 3 all items. And the all items collection is effectively the rows that the gallery has loaded so far and then obviously rendered. Now, as I scroll through this, it will then go and get more rows, and this infinite scrolling. So you can see there, it's now gone up to 200. And as I scroll down, it'll go to 300. But what's interesting is that actually we're talking about delegation. The delegation limit is 500 by default. And if we go over into if we go into the monitoring tools here and look at what's going on behind the scenes there, you'll notice that because it's the delegation limit, as I scroll through, go in here and run this, and as it goes up to 300, there we go, it's gone up to 300. If I go into my accounts, you won't, there's no get rows, there's no get more rows. And I go up to 400, Again, there's no get more rows. It will refresh the cache in the background occasionally, but there's no get more rows. And then I go up to 500 and then now go into 600. This is now where we get this call to get more rows. And if I go and select this and go and look at the request here, you'll see that it's got a request using this skip token. And the skip token is this cookie that is called a paging cookie just for sort of legacy reasons. But it's just this unique piece of information that tells Dataverse how to get the next page based on the previous page, because this bit of information comes from the previous rows. If I go and look at get rows here and I look at the response and then now go to put this into a JSON tree and go right down to the bottom of this response here, then you'll see that in the response, we have got this skip token that it's been provided. So the gallery remembers this skip token, and then Canvas App uses that when it goes and gets the next set of rows. So let's look at how the details list manages this paging, because at the moment, if we go back into our account search page, at the moment, we've got the ability to sort, and that's using the delegation. If we come in here, we get rows, and you can see that the request is going over using a delegated sort. But what is happening is that this is all internal to the details list, because we're passing it just the items being the accounts. So let's just add a little bit of filtering functionality in here. So I'm going to paste in here a combo box. So let's just look at actually what this is. And so the items of this combo box is very simply the choices of the industry field on the accounts. So it's going to list all of the choices for that industry choices column. And then we have got this is a Creator Kit icon control, and the on change for this is resetting this combo. So it allows us to remove any filter that we've provided. And then we're using this select function, and select simulates a button press. And I've got a button called function apply filters. So this is a common pattern, if you like, to have a button that eventually will filter that acts as a function that we can call from multiple different places. So we're calling it both from this reset filters to, obviously make sure that any filters are reflected, but we can also come into the screen on visible. And so when we navigate to this screen, it's going to also reset it and apply any logic. And if we look at the on select function here, so we don't need to worry so much about the rest of this, but the key point here is this setting of this context variable grid event. And we're setting it to load first page, which is the details list event to load that first page. And then we've got this additional piece on the end here, which is a random element to that screen, because the reason we have to add that random element is because we want to always trigger the event, the on change event, even if we're setting it to the same value. Because if we're going to load the next page, if we keep on setting it to next page, then if it doesn't change, then it won't trigger the on change. So if we go back to our details grid here, and we run this, at the moment we can see that we can select various different items here and we can clear them, but it's not doing anything to this details list here. So in order to do that, what we have to do is we have to go and change the items. So at the moment, it's just bound directly to the items here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say the filter where the industry here, industry equals the combo industry selected, and then we say value, and then we also want to say deal with the situation where the combo is empty, so is blank combo industry selected, like that. This is going to be delegatable. We don't have any blue underlining or any exclamation marks adding onto that. So now if we run this and we select consulting, we can see it changes here. And if I select one that doesn't have any values, what's equipment and vehicle rent, there we go. It's filtered. There's nothing there. Select vehicle rentals. It's showing us all the items. And if I reset that, and then the sorting will all happen on the server. So if we come over into our monitoring here, if we look at get rows, what we'll see is if we look at what we've got is a order by. So there's the order by. And then we've also got a filter here, which is going to be that industry filter. So it's all happening on the server, which is exactly what we want to have, the filtering and the sorting. But we haven't got any paging. So the details list provides us with a number of different properties. So I'm going to paste in label here, and let's look at the text of this label. So the label here is saying total number of records from the details list. And I'm also going to go and paste in a paging control here. And I'll show you what that does. And I'm pasting this in, incidentally, into the container that contains the grid that we showed last time with the elevation behind it. And so you can see it's the bottom. Let's just make there's some space up for this, because you can see it's overlaying on top of the details list, which isn't very helpful. So let's change the height to be, let's rename the label for this to be total records. Like that, and then change the height of the details list to be, subtract that height there, so we can accommodate the height like that. There we go. So you can see at the bottom here we've got a bit of space. So we've got the paging on the right and the total number of records on the left, which is a good start. So let's look at the properties of this control here, which is just a stack. And it contains two icons, and then it's got a label to show the number of pages, and then a next page icon. And these are using the icons from the Fluent UI icon control. We select the icon from the Fluent UI icon set, which you can grab from the Fluent UI website, or you can go and in the Creator Kit reference app, there's a little app that allows you to browse them. So you can see here the icon name is previous for that first arrow. And so if we look at the on change of this, you'll notice here that it's very similar to the apply filters, which gets set when we first load the page. So it's setting this load first page, and it's adding this random element on to trigger the on change. If we go to the move to the next page, again, this is very similar. Except for it's setting load next page with a random element, and then we've got load previous page, which goes back. And we're also maintaining this kind of variable here, the page number that we're on, to back this, but we're not actually using that at the moment. So we'll see how that is used in a minute. We've also got this label in the middle here, which is using those additional properties of the details list, a page number and total page number. So again, it's the details list giving us this information. And if we go to the display mode, you can see that it is using these properties, has next page and has previous page, to decide whether or not it is view or it's disabled. Because obviously if there is no next page, we want to disable the next button. If there's no previous page, we want to disable the previous back button. So all that remains is if we go to our on change, if you remember, there is that context variable called grid event, this one here, and we wire this up to our details list, because in the details list there is this input event property. If we go to this details list here, there is this input event property, and I can just put that there. So whenever the input event changes, it triggers the on change, and the details list gets that event and then acts upon it. And so if we look at the apply filters, there's another context variable here, which is the page size. So let's set this page size to initially be, I don't know, let's say 25, like that. And there's a property again in the details list, which is called, as you'd expect it, page size here. So let's pop that in, page size. And then if we now go and run this, apply filters, if we page through each of these, we can see here it's now starting to page, which is great. And we are getting the filtering, we're getting the sorting, and we're also getting the filtering. But when I remove this item, notice that what's happened here is it's gone up to only 500 records, because actually by default, the details list is only going to be able to manage paging automatically through 500 records, because there's a limitation of the Power Apps component framework mechanism. So in order to get the ability to page through more records than just 500, then what we need to do is we need to enable this property called large dataset paging. All this does is it kind of bypasses some of the limitations of the details list to enable us to kind of page beyond that 500 records, because by default it's going to check, are we on that last page? And if we're up at that 500 limit, then it thinks that there's no more records because we've only got 500 being returned. But when you turn this on, it bypasses that check to enable us to page past that 500 record limit. Now what will happen is if I keep on moving forwards, if I go up to the last page, that page 20, now I can move past that page into page 21, page 22. But you'll notice that the total number of records here is being returned as -1, which is not very helpful. And therefore, obviously, correspondingly, we're getting -1 of the total number of pages because it just doesn't know. And the reason behind this is that in order to get the number of records, you need to pass a delegatable query that does an aggregate query on the server. And so the good news is you can get around that because you can use count rows, which is a delegatable query against Dataverse. So let's do that now. Let's look at how the count rows gets called. And if we look at the apply filters here, you can see here we are setting, because I already pasted this in, we're setting the count total number of rows to be the filter that we're applying based on the industry and the combo industry. So that it will then apply this count rows, which is delegated, and it will apply the same set of filtering that we're currently using inside the details list. And then what we'll also do is we will calculate the total number of pages based on the page size and the total number of rows. So it rounds it up because obviously it's a fraction, it's still a single page. And there's also this additional caveat at the bottom, the end here, to say if there's no records, then we're just going to still show it as a single page because it would look strange if it's going to be page 1 of 0. Okay, so we've now got these two variables, total rows and total pages, and we can now use those in place of the properties that the Fluent details list gives us, instead to show the number of page, the page we're on, whether or not we can move to the next page. So we'll go over here, and rather than using that details list property, I'm just going to pop in here the total records here. And also I will remove this paging element here, and I'm going to paste in a different one, and I'll run through what that looks like. And I'm just going to position that as parent.width minus self.width, so it just positions at the end, and then let's just subtract 8u to kind of give it some spacing. And what that's doing is if we look at the page number label that is in the middle of this control here, this is now at the moment showing the page number here, but we're going to say page that we're on, so that's the current page, and then it's showing of the total pages. So again, we're replacing those Fluent control properties with the variables that we're maintaining in our app. And also we're replacing the display, enable the display mode rules, if we can see here, based on not the properties has next page, has previous page. We are using the variable that we are maintaining based on our count rows and the current page that we're on. So now when we run this, let's go and just apply filters here. And what we can see is that we've now got the total number of records, which is good. We see it's over 5,000. And also we are seeing the total number of records, which is 212. And if I select consulting here, we can see it's filtered down and we've only got 6 pages. But say we wanted to use some manual sorting, so we didn't want to use the internal sorting, maybe we wanted to use add columns so that we would convert our data set into a collection and therefore break that linkage between the details list and our data source. Or maybe even we wanted to control which column we were sorting by externally to the control, rather than relying on the fact that the user has to select the columns. So how do we go about doing that? So to move to external paging rather than internal paging, we're going to use a technique that's common with just standard galleries, and that is using the last n, first n pattern. And the idea of this is that what we do is we firstly go and get the first n pages, and we get the number of records we get is the page size times the page number we're on. So if we have 25 records and we're on the second page and the page size is 10, then we're going to go and grab the first 20 records. And then what we do is we use last n to then go and grab the tail of those records, which is the page size. So if we're on the second page, the tail will be 10 records. So we grab the first 20 records and then we grab the last 10 records. Then there is an additional clause here to say, well, if we're on the last page, i.e. the page number we're on is equals the total number of pages, and the actual number of rows is not equally divisible by the page size, i.e. the modulus of the total rows is greater than 0, then we return this modulus of the total number of rows divided by the page size. So in this case, that will be the remainder will be 5 because we're dividing 25 by 10, and that relieves a remainder of 5. So we're going to, the tail will be 5. And so if the number of records is equally divisible by page size, say we have 30 records, then the third page will contain just a standard page size, which will be 10. And so this technique allows us to then page through the records. But in this case, we are using we're binding it to accounts. And the problem with that is that this is not delegatable. This kind of last n, first n technique is not in itself delegatable. So we will always hit that delegation limit and we're not actually going to be able to page past that 500 records. So how do we get around that? Well, what we're doing is we're going to use a gallery, and we're going to use the feature of the gallery we looked at earlier, which is that ability to constantly do that get rows, that virtual paging mechanism as we scroll down. And so if I insert a gallery here, I'm just going to insert it at the top level on that page. And let's say insert a vertical gallery. And I'm going to bind it just in this case to accounts. And let's just shrink it down so that it's a little bit smaller and pop it at the top here. Move it over there. And I'm going to call it just gal paging, like that. And so what we'll also do is we'll add in a label, and that label is, let's put it in at the screen level. That label is going to show, this is just for debug purposes, the number of records in. So we're going to say count rows, gal paging, all items. And if you remember the all items property, why is that giving me, did I name this wrong? Yeah, I named it wrong. So gal paging, like that. And we're going to, there we go. So now what we've got is 100 records because it's loaded that first set of records. And if I scroll down in this gallery, then it will keep on loading those records up in increments, and then it'll hit 500, and then it'll get 600, etc. So we're using that facility of the gallery to kind of constantly load more records. Now, we don't need any of these elements inside of the gallery. We don't need to show anything. So I'm just going to delete all these because there's no point in having them. And in fact, I can even make it invisible. So if we set the gallery property to say invisible, let's say toggle that off so it's invisible. I'm going to leave this label here just for reference purposes. But I can't rely on the user scrolling to the end of these items to get the next set of records. I need to make sure that that's bound to the events that we have in our paging control at the bottom. And so what we can do is in the gallery, there is a special property called default. And what that does is it allows us to define which item is selected in the gallery. And if we select the last item in that gallery, then it will automatically select that item and then load more records. So I'm going to pop a little command, a little expression in here to say, okay, if the page number times the page size is greater than the number of records loaded into this gallery, then move the selected item to be the last item in the gallery. So if we've only got 100 records, it's going to select the 100th record. And of course, what that does is it forces the gallery to then go and load more records, which is great. So now at the moment, we've got our gallery bound just simply to accounts. Well, of course, in our filtering, we know that actually we want to bind it to the filter on accounts based on the industry selected. So if we go into the items of that gallery and go to the data source, and rather than it being accounts, I'm just going to pop the same filter in that we're using. And so now we know that it's going to easily load the filtered items. And the last thing that needs to be done here is, rather than binding directly to our data grid to accounts, what we can do here is we can bind this to the gal paging or items. And so now the data set is using the gallery as a backing data source. Rather than binding directly to the accounts, it's using that gallery all items. And so now what that means is that as we scroll through these items here, you can see what's happening is it's loading more and more records at the top here. So we've now got 300, and the records that are being displayed in our gallery here in our data grid is reflecting that last n, first n pattern. So it allows me to move through. So I've got 516 records here, and now it's fully loaded all of those 516 records, and we're showing page 11 of 11. And of course, if we would have delegation, it would only ever hit that 500 record. If I clear the filter, we've now got 5,295 records, and so we've now got 106 pages, and I can keep on moving through all of those 106 pages. I can keep on going, and it's going to keep on loading more and more records, which is great. But if we select these headers, if you remember before, we were using internal sorting as well as internal paging. Well, unfortunately, when you move to external paging and we bind to a collection in this case and break that link, we also break that link to be able to do automatic filtering. So what we have to do is we have to use manual filtering. Now, if we go over to the Creator Kit, we go over to the Creator Kit documentation here on the details list, there is a section here on automatic sorting and manual sorting. And so it's saying, well, okay, when you have a collection, e.g., we might use add columns, you were going to have to move over to manual sorting. And it gives us the pattern to use here. So it's saying inside the on change event of our details list, paste this following code. So if I go here and go and pop this into the on change of our details list, we can see what it's doing here. The pattern that it's using here is that it's saying, okay, if the event that the details list is emitting, there's this event name property, it will update the context to say, this is the column that the details list is giving us that it's being sorted by. And there's also another property that the details list gives us saying which direction it's being sorted. So when the user selects those headers, what's happening is the details list is emitting this event to tell us which column and which direction. So as what we now need to do is tell the details list what is being sorted by as well. So this allows us to change the column externally. So we're now, not only we responding to click events on the headers, we're also passing in which column is being sorted to the details list using that context variable. And we're also passing in the direction as well. So if we go into the sort direction, there's a little expression here, which is just simply saying if it's ascending, we give ascending, otherwise descending. So we no longer need this input event, which is used to be using the paging, using the input event, load next page, load previous page, etc. We no longer need to do that because we're handling all this using external paging. Well, of course, what that means is if we now select these headers, that's great. We can see it's toggling the little sort icon, which is great, but it's not actually sorting. And the reason is, of course, is that now we're using external sorting. We need to implement the sorting on the data source of our gallery, which is backing that details list. Well, okay, so we can do that by, if we paste in, I'm just going to paste in a little expression here. So this is now a switch statement on the sort call, and if it's name, and so if you remember that the name was the first display name of the account, it's now going to sort on that filter expression. This is the expression we had previously. So it's basically just wrapping that filter up inside a sort. Now this, when we do it like this is delegatable, because as long as we don't have any add columns inside the sort, that sort will be passed along with the filter, and we could go and look at the monitor and we'd see that as well. Now I can then expand that out to be other columns as well. So let's use industry. But what we notice here immediately is we get an error here, and that is that it's saying that the delegation of sort is not possible for choice columns, because unfortunately, although you can sort on dates and you can sort on text values and numeric values, at the moment the Dataverse connector doesn't allow us to sort on both choice columns and lookup columns. And unfortunately, we've both got a choice column and a lookup, because we've got the industry, which is choice, and we've got our status, which is a lookup column. So in order to get around that, what we can do is we can create like a dummy attribute, a dummy column, and then we set that using either a plugin or a flow. I'm using a flow, just simply saying responding to change of the industry column or creation of the record, and it just goes and updates this value, this dummy column, with the value of the choice that's being provided in that event. And so now, because this is just a numeric value, it allows us to sort on it. And so if I expand this out and let's just look at what's going on here. I've just pasted in what we've now got is just expanded that same pattern out. So we've got our industry sorting, and we've also got our account status value sorting. So that's that lookup. Now, incidentally, if we look at the columns of that, the reason it's that underscore is because when we're using internal sorting, the pattern is you have to use the web API value to sort by the lookup value. And I think perhaps this is why it's currently not delegatable, because there's a sort of subtlety in terms of the way in which you have to sort. So what we're doing is we're responding to that sort column, because remember the sort column is being given to us by the event that's coming out of the details list. And in the same way, I've got this dummy column here called account status sort, and I've got a flow that sets this from the lookup, and it goes and grabs the lookup, and there's a column in the lookup. So if we go over into account statuses here, which is that related table, and go to edit data, and if we go over, you can see there's the sort value. So we're grabbing that and updating that value inside this dummy column whenever the record is created or modified. Again, if I just change that to be account status, it's going to give us the same expression error because it's not delegatable. Maybe that'll be fixed eventually. And then what we've got is we've got a default value here that just simply says, but if there is no sort expression given, or indeed where you have selected name as the sort column, it will go and sort by account name. And so if we run this now and toggle the sort, you can see here that it is actually going and sorting by this column value. And if I move back to page 1, you can see there sorting by Z, and now we've got A. And then if we sort by statuses, you can see that it's got all of the sorting going on there. And so if I sort by just consulting, you can see here it's only got consulting values. So that's all working. When we change our filters, what we're also wanting to do is to reset it to be the first page. So what we can do is, let's go and take that, and we'll go into the event of our details list on change here. And we'll also want to, as well as updating the sort context, what we're going to do is we are going to add in an additional update to page 1. So if I now go and run this and move over to like page 3 and sort by industry, you can see it's moved back to page 1. And that's standard behavior of a details list, especially in model-driven apps. That's exactly how it works. So now we've got the ability to, in a fully delegatable way, have sorting external, and I could actually set those values, the sorting values, from a command bar, for example, or any other buttons. So if we go and look at our monitor, we can just check, because it's always a good idea to check that your queries are delegatable. And if we run this and we do some paging and move into the different pages, and we go to our monitor here, so far we've got no calls because we're still inside the delegatable limit. I've got a page size here of just 100, So actually, let's see what page size do we have. I've got a page size of 50 that I've changed it to. And so if we go up to the 400, another 500, now this will try and load the 600 record. And so if we go into our monitor, you can see here we've got the refresh of cache get rows, but then we've got that get more rows. And so, and again, remember, if we look at the request here, it's got the order by, which is being delegated. And we've also got our skip token going on here that allows us to make sure that it's not getting all of the accounts up to that delegatable limit and downloading and then performing the sort. If the sort was happening on the client, you would see an additional sort row there. If I add in a filter such as like consulting like that and go in here, you'll see the get scalar result, which because it needs to go and get the total number of records. And it also will see the delegation happening as well. So we've now got the filter added in as well as the order by. Well, there we have it. I hope you found that useful. If you do, then please subscribe to my channel and I will see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Cheers.